you. So I have been doing for the last nearly 5 weeks now, an amazing postpartum corrective exercise specialist program with Sarah DeVal, who is amazing. Anyway, this week has been around the pelvic floor. And this is something that in my group, so many people seem to have issues with. The whole mind-brain connection to the body and the pelvic floor. So some people are saying, I don't understand what you mean by pulling up my pelvic floor or connecting with my pelvic floor, engaging with my pelvic floor. Is it a Kegel? Is it something else? And what I wanted to do is share a trick and exercise for you to kind of try and orientate yourself around your pelvic floor and the different muscles in the pelvic floor. Now, the pelvic floor has two triangles. So it has a urogenital triangle at the front and a anal triangle at the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on isolating and working both. Okay. The other thing that people are telling me is that they're having a little bit of trouble with connecting with their pelvis. So when I say don't make sure your pelvis is aligned, they're like, well, I'm not sure. And am I in a posterior pelvic tilt? Am I in an anterior pelvic tilt? Am I aligned? So I want to go through that with you as well. So let's start. Grab a chair and we're going to sit down in the chair and I want you to spread your legs a little bit. So from here, we're going to go through a few positions. So the first one I want you to do is I want you to rock back. So you're rocking back to sit on your tailbone pretty much. Now this is a posterior pelvic tilt, so we've rocked our pelvis under. Now, I just want you to take a moment and feel like, does this hurt to get into this position? Because it shouldn't hurt, okay? So if it is painful and you feel like something's wrong, it's likely that your pelvic floor muscles here are tight and maybe they're pulling on your tailbone incorrectly. And I do suggest if you have pelvic floor issues, especially something like this, that you go and see a pelvic floor PT or a women's health specialist so they can help you release some of these muscles. Okay, so we've tucked back. Now I want you to sit up straight and you should feel two bones, right? These are your sits bones. And I want you to take note. Does one feel like it's got a little extra flesh under it, or is the pressure the same on both? If one feels like there's a little extra flesh there, so you don't feel the pressure quite as much, I want you to come and pull it out, okay? So that you feel the same amount of pressure on both. Now, if this is the case, what could be happening is your pelvis isn't aligned. Okay, so you might have an imbalance in the muscles around your pelvis, which is causing a bit of a twist. Now, if this is the case, I do recommend my hip flexor program, which will help you rebalance, because some of your pelvic floor issues might not be from weakness within your pelvic floor, but from weakness of the other muscles surrounding the hips, and your pelvis is out of alignment. So let's just make sure that they're sitting right. And now let's move forward and rock forward so that we've rocked off our sits bones and forward. Okay, so let's try this again. So rock back, posterior pelvic tilt, straight up. So we have both sits bones on there. This is your aligned pelvis. And forward, we're going into an anterior pelvic tilt where you get that arch in your lower back. And back to center. All right. So now we're sort of starting to get some understanding of the different alignments of our pelvis can go into. And we now have worked out, let's make sure our pelvis is aligned and no twisting happening. Now I want us to work a little bit on that connection with the pelvic floor. And we're going to go through a couple of different areas here. So I want you to rock back again. And now when we're back here, I want you to tighten your back part of your pelvic floor, okay? So coming back and tighten it. Now what we're going to do is, after an inhale, we're going to exhale, and I want you to try and stop gas coming out, okay? So that's the feeling that you should. So inhale, exhale, stop some gas. Excellent. And relax. Inhale, exhale, stop gas. Okay, so in this position, we're working that anal triangle, so the back part of your pelvic floor. Now come back to center, and now I want you to rock forward into that anterior part, so we're off our sit bones. And this time I want us to inhale, and on the exhale, we're going to contract the front part of our pelvic floor, and that's going to be like we're stopping pee, okay? So inhale, exhale, and I want you to just try and stop pee, okay? Excellent, and relax. And again, inhale, exhale, stop the pee, and relax. And come back to the center. Now, you may have found that it was easier to contract the front part of your pelvic floor and stop pee, and harder to contract the back part of your pelvic floor and stop the gas coming out. So take note of what was more difficult, because it's really important to have a good balance within your pelvic floor so that one part of it isn't stronger than the other. So you may need to work on isolating the different parts of your pelvic floor in order to strengthen everything together. Right, now I want you to start in the middle, get those sit bones right, and standing or sitting nice and tall. And I want, on the exhale this time, I want you to think about doing both. So I want you to stop pee and stop gas at the same time. So inhale, exhale, stop both, inhale and relax. On the inhale, you should actually feel like the pressure is going down into your pelvic floor so that it relaxes. And then on the exhale, we're engaging and squeezing both up. So let's try that again. Inhale, exhale, both squeezing. Hey, Michelle. And relax. Great work. So when we are doing our exercises, so if you're doing any of my programs, trying to engage your TVAs, and I talk about pulling up your pelvic floor, pulling up your pelvic floor, it means both ends. So both the stopping the pee and the stopping of the gas to pull up in your pelvic floor, okay? Try not to just let one happen. Think about both when you're pulling up your pelvic floor, and the same when we're doing squats or lunges or any of the lifting exercises. When you're engaging your pelvic floor or pulling up your pelvic floor, you really need to work on both, okay? So I want you to keep thinking about that with any of the exercises, and hopefully this has helped you understand why I am so particular about the position of your pelvis and not having that anterior pelvic tilt. Because if you have an anterior pelvic tilt, it can be really hard to engage the back of your pelvic floor. And if you're in a posterior pelvic tilt, it can be really hard to engage the front of your pelvic floor. So we need that neutral pelvis to be able to engage both easily and to be able to safely do a lot of our exercises. All right, I hope that helped, and I will chat to you again soon.